Hey, what up, Long Beach? Welcome back to another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk, another high school football preview edition. As always, I am co-sports editor JJ Fiddler to my right.
Co-sports editor Mike Gardabasio, and to my right,
guy wearing a hat, Tyler Hendrickson, and this show is not possible, and nothing that we do would be possible without our sponsors, Naples Rib Company, down on 2nd Street. Also down on 2nd Street, Papa Lucci's Italian Ristorante.
Putting the eat in 2nd Street, and you're right, literally nothing we do would be possible without these guys. I don't think I'd be wearing this hat right now.
Well, we definitely couldn't do the videos we do, and the videos we do are probably one of the most fun part of this job. You know, I can remember thinking about doing them way back. Mike, what were we talking, 2008, 2007?
2007, yeah.
And if I can quote a great show called Sports Night, let's just call it highlight, man. Let's just do what we do, and that's what we ended up doing.
If I can use an alternate quote from Sports Night, which is also a quote of Napoleon, we were like, let's just show up and see what happens. We'll just point a video camera at this stuff, see what happens. I mean, I think our first week we did a football highlight took us till 6 a.m. to cut one highlight, and it was 8 minutes long and really boring, and people loved it. And I think at this point, we've managed to progress enough to where people actually like them, and we're actually quite proud of them. And we just last week crossed over the 5 million view mark on our YouTube channel, which we have not had the same YouTube channel the whole time we've been working because we were at 2 different papers. But 4 years, 5 million views, and 1.8 million in the last year. We're all very proud of that, and thank you to everyone listening that was a part of it.
It was
the
never...
sponsors were a part of it, and a lot of people
absolutely
filmed videos in that channel.
A lot of people filmed videos with us, helping us out with that stuff, obviously being on the calls.
Tyler started out doing that.
Exactly.
He just showed up with video of a Poly at Narbonne game that just so happened to be Jason Pops Fowles, safety as a freshman, which is one of the funniest plays ever because the defensive coordinator literally just told him, go get the quarterback, and then he did, and he got a safety. And that was how Tyler started working with us. And we're like, all right, he's pretty good at this.
Facts only. Also, Randall Goforth returned a kick in that game for a touchdown, Goforth and Swerve, and that win at Narbonne. And so, yeah, thank you to all the people that have watched the videos, subscribed, everything like that. It helps a lot. We appreciate it.
We get so much stuff that doesn't end up on the video or on the website because we film everything, or as much as we possibly
can. It goes straight to Gazette Spin.
It does go to the Gazette Spin, yeah. And to be honest with you, some of the more entertaining clips we bring back and show each other from our games don't end up in the video. We've got a few of them taking behind the curtain a little bit here at the Press Telegram and GazetteSports.com production.
We have an outtake reel, but you'd have to pay us to see that.
That is true, but we got some good ones this week. Like, you got to look at the Jordan Dominguez game, the one that I was at, and the play from Jefferson Safili, who basically just zip coded his way into this highlight.
AKA also known as...
He is zip code 90807. He is so big, he plugs up that middle, made a couple great plays, the most impressive of which is the one-handed interception he made in the traffic. The play was so strange and so weird looking that the referees called the play dead
just to figure out
what happened. Like, did that big guy seriously just pick that ball off with one hand? They got together, they figured it out, and after calling the play dead, we're like, no, white ball. We're going the other way.
But that's one of our favorite nicknames ever, and he's a great kid, worthy of a memorable nickname. And obviously, anytime a lineman gets an interception, that's always one of, or it just ends up with the ball. It's always one of my favorite.
And doesn't every team want a dude worthy of the nickname zip code?
Yes.
I want a zip code on my defensive line.
There are several more league teams
I want a couple
who would
of
love to have a defensive tackle like zip code. Yes.
Well, there wasn't the only physicality we saw on the weekend.
No, mine's a little bit less lighthearted, and I'm sorry to make things a bit morose, I guess. But no, I had footage, and part of the footage did make it into the video of the referee, the side judge, on the line judge on Poly's side, got bowled over and got knocked on his back and hit his head on the turf really hard. It was really actually kind of a scary moment. And he, eventually got to his feet and went back out there. But later in the game was essentially displaying like cognitive problems. I mean, thought it was the wrong quarter from what one of the other referees said. So, he ends up going to sit with the Poly trainers for the rest of the game. But you kind of forget that about officials. And I know that, reporters, we all whine about officials a lot because they're always telling you to back up off the line. And it's like, come on, you're working, I'm working. I'm not going to jump in front of you or something. I'm not an idiot. But, you do forget these kinds of things do occasionally happen to these guys. Last year, I know they were very strict on the sidelines because a ref in Texas, I think it was paralyzed. Basically just tripped over someone and fell on his head, and was paralyzed because of that. So I mean, just I guess a plea to everyone who's on the sideline to give everyone a little bit extra room this week so that we don't have mishaps like we had with the official at the Poly game last week, because that was definitely, it was scary. I mean, I think for a minute there it was kind of like, okay, what's happened? How serious is this? Because you saw people start to pull their phones out for the ambulance.
Yeah.
I mean, he really hit the ground hard.
We were standing right there, obviously, as you can see by the clip, and everybody knew.
Right.
There was no person to be like, oh, did he hit his head that hard? You knew it immediately, and you're right, Mike. It was.
He didn't fall on his butt.
No, it was an immediate reminder that when you are on the sideline, for lack of a better term, you do kind of take your life in your own hands. Like, stay loose, move around, and you're right. It would be a good idea for everybody this week to just give each other a little bit more space out there.
And one final note, I mean, I remember, I think it was just last year, but Jeremiah and Josiah Blandon, who played at Milliken and Poly, who we know the Blandon family quite well, their mom, Shelly, who's a longtime Poly football booster, was at just a passing league thing, I think. And someone rolled up on her from behind, and she ended up needing surgery on her leg. I mean, that stuff, it's like, you do forget that, like, that sideline's it's not like basketball where, there's some kind of a barrier at the baseline or something. I mean, you're just right there.
No,
and if they cross that, they don't magically slow down.
Stay aware out there. Stay aware, everybody.
Yeah.
Speaking of staying aware and staying ready...
Well, I had an interesting moment that sometimes you think you're going to get some video magic and you edit the highlight in your head as you're filming. Sometimes, just things just don't work out. So, Los Al got a big win at Paramount, 41-9. They got a solid game from Jacob Gasser, who led the team in receiving, and he had a beautiful touchdown catch. Okay, it was a great touchdown catch. He high pointed the ball. It was first score of the third quarter. It was awesome. I know he's the kicker, so I follow, he runs, celebrates with his teammates and everything, and I'm waiting for the moment he's going to catch the tee, which he does. It's all in frame. It looks great. He throws it down, lines up for the kick, because I know it's like he's going to add this extra point. So here it comes. Jacob Gasser, 7 points on one play, doing everything. And the Buffalo Bills pulls it left. And I was like, come on, kid. This was your moment. We never put extra points in the highlight.
The first ever extra point that didn't decide a game. That we put in a highlight.
And he made all the other ones. It's not like, he's an inconsistent kicker. Like, he's good. He made all the other ones. It's just in that moment, he was probably too turnt from the touchdown and just pulled it left a little bit. So I felt really bad. And we don't like putting misses in the video.
No.
And we're showing it here, and I apologize. No disrespect. And your touchdown was great.
His touchdown is a top 10 nominee.
And it was not a clutch extra point. It didn't decide the game at all. They had a big lead. But it's like, come on, bro. Just help me out.
It's crazy that
help me to help you.
Gasser and Blake Johnson, two starters on the offense and defense respectively, are Los Al's kicker and punter. I love that. And they're really good, too.
They're legitimate. We want special teams to be special, and they've got athletes on their special teams.
Indeed they do. We're probably going to end up with more clips that could be put into this segment next week.
Sure.
I think we get one every week. We've also going to get some really good looks at some really good talent this week. Some of these local teams are taking on some other teams in this non-league schedule that have got some future Pac-12 and Division I BCS type players on them. And we're going to get an up-close look at them right now as we preview the week of football coming up. Stick with us. Another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk coming at you. Defending national champions St. John Bosco Braves back in action this week, and we've got our Braves beat writer extraordinaire Chris Trevino joining us. They are up for their stiffest test of the year this week, aren't they, Chris?
Very easily their stiffest test. The most talented team since De La Salle. That's what I'm thinking. They got Central Catholic coming all the way down from Oregon, California versus Oregon. Last year's 6A state championship, so we got two state champions going head-to-head, and it's going to be a good one.
I think it's going to be a great one because I've been waiting since the De La Salle game to find out if this defense can reload, re-up, and kind of just reset as one of the more dominant units in the Pac-5. They were that without a question last year. Can they be that against this team, and are they going to see some pretty good talent?
Without question, everyone wants to see who's going to be that real true test for this very young defense. It only returns one guy on the starting side. So, yeah, this is going to be the game. Central Catholic has a massive offensive line. People are going to look at them and, going to be reminiscent of last year's Bosco line. That was such a good. They got guys 6'7", Blake Brandell got a bunch of offers. He's the guy on that. They got a 6'5" guy, 6'4" guy, 6'2". So they're huge all across the board. And they have a really, really good running back in Cameron Scarlett, the number one ranked player in the state of Oregon.
Yeah, Scarlett's actually getting offers from everybody in the Pac-12 as well, trying to put that letter on the Braves defense. If you had to make a prediction as to one of the Braves defenders that's going to stand out and probably highlight in your highlight video, who would it be?
That's a tough one. I mean, those guys on the line are really young, so I'm just going to go Nazanessi right there in the middle linebacker spot. I mean, he's the returning guy. He's the one who's got the experience, so he's going to be, key in stopping, Cameron Scarlett and helping, his D-line get past those mammoth guys up front.
This is a big game for Catholic, obviously, but it's not their biggest one. They got a big win last week as well, right?
They did. They took down the number 2 team in Oregon right behind them, Jesuit, their rival, in the game that is known as the Holy War, which I think is a really cool rivalry game nickname. But yeah, they edged them out 24-17, and a lot of people thought it was going to be a shootout, but it wasn't necessarily that. But first week, getting the kinks out. So I think they're going to be better offensively this week, another week of practice. So yeah, they had a big win in their first week.
I feel like last year we got a sneak preview of what a home game for the St. John Bosco Braves could be when Mater Dei came in during the regular season, and they put up the extra stands. It was just a scene out there. This is the St. John Bosco home opener. What's it going to look like?
It's going to be interesting because obviously I don't know how big of an Oregon contingent will be coming down for this game, but I'm sure there's going to be some Central Catholic fans. But, I would imagine that these Braves are eager to get these guys in their home stadium, eager to see that giant new banner up and appreciate that in tailgate. So I think it's going to be jam-packed both sides, even if it's not completely Oregon on that other side.
You're going to be there doing the live coverage for us. How can people follow it?
You can follow me at my Twitter, or you can follow us on the Press Telegram Twitter, and I'll be giving all updates all night.
Long Beach Poly has crept back into the national discussion with 2 big wins to start the season. They're now a unanimous top 25 team, creeping up in the Max Prep rankings in particular, where they're number 20 in their writers poll. And, not a big surprise, I think, to us. We certainly expected the Jackrabbits with 2 All-Americans on defense to look this good. I think this week will be their biggest test so far in terms of the quality of team they're playing, because they're hosting Westlake, who is, I think Poly was up to a top 5 team in the Pac-5 this week. Westlake is number 10 in the Pac-5 and has a legit quarterback in Malik Henry.
Yeah, he's a guy, so it will definitely be the test because, the Jackrabbits, they've gone up against some playmakers, but this guy's going to have the ball in his hands every play. And so he's, he can take over a game. Now, the problem for Westlake is that quarterbacks have had a difficult time completing their dropbacks.
Right.
Because JoJo Wicker is a man possessed right now.
No one quicker. I mean, I've literally never seen anyone get to the quarterback that quickly, but he had 2 plays in a row in the Crenshaw game where he was there literally before the quarterback finished a 3-step drop, which is like there's essentially nothing you can do. You can't even scramble before you take the 3-step drop.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're going to literally take the snap and turn around and run away, which is not a key to many good plays.
I think they call that the Oakland Raiders offense.
It's the Carr family knows that offense well because I think that's what David ran with the Texans. But yeah, it's JoJo Oh No Wicker because he's just on you before you
They
even
actually
realize.
call the defense JoJo Go. It was literally
That's awesome.
just go get the quarterback, and so far he's done that at an alarming rate with 10 sacks and 3 forced fumbles through 2 games. So to me, the biggest question in this is can Westlake protect their guy? What are they going to do to shade protections? Because they're not just going to let this happen for the entire game the way that Narbonne and Crenshaw kind of had to. But to me, that's sort of going to decide the game, and I'm excited to see it.
Well, and can Poly get off to a better start than they did against Narbonne? Can they clean up the penalties that they had and certain other things that they weren't happy with? But they did sort of respond to that sluggish start the way you would want if you're a Poly fan.
It was what
we
you
kind of talked about that,
right.
Yeah, on last week's show.
It's exactly what you said last week, is how do they respond to that early game adversity? And they had some. They responded very well, and Wicker in particular in the second half, I mean, he did what he does, and they got the win. So I'm curious to see if he has another multi-sack game. I think that definitely spells good things for Poly, especially with a secondary that you have a secondary that good, and there's also a 3-second clock on the quarterback. That's a hard defense to move the ball against.
Yeah.
We put in our Gazette preview that this game is kind of the first time where it's just football. Obviously, you had Antonio Pierce's debut as head coach in the first game. You had the blackout, the New Jersey's home opener in the second game. And this one is like lacking in off-the-field storylines as much as you can say that about a Long Beach Poly football game. What does that mean for the players on the field when the first whistle blows?
I actually think it'll be really good because I thought that, and I brought this up last week, when you give a Poly team new jerseys and they have a new way of entering the stadium and a new head coach, you kind of expect them to be a little bit unfocused just because that's kind of been the nature of the program, especially off a big win. But to me, a game where there'll be less people there, but about 5,000 to 6,000 people at the Narbonne game, there'll be less people there. There's less, no one's trying to score 50 points on the first play. I actually think it bodes really well for them that they'll be able to just go out and play football, because I think they're a better team than they've even shown the last 2 weeks, and I think having some of that extra stuff off of it will help that come through, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. They worry less about the jerseys, about making a statement, about proving anything. Now they're just going out and trying to focus on beating Westlake, and they'll start to get into that rhythm. And keep in mind, they're still adjusting to a new coaching staff, new offense. So you would expect this team to gel and sort of get better as the season goes on, more than most teams, because most teams are in a system that they're already familiar with. So there's going to be that growth that happens. And I think you're right. I think once they can now just focus on playing Westlake and not trying to prove anything above that, then we'll see a better Long Beach Poly this week.
It's the Mario Morales Bowl. Head coach taking his St. Anthony Saints across town to take on his former team, the Wilson Bruins, this week. A big jump in division for those Saints, and probably the most historic intercity game outside the Moore League for the Saints, because it's probably the first one in, 50 years.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time they played a Moore League team like that. It'll be interesting. Like you said, JJ, that is a big jump in division. But the Saints, obviously, there's juice. They want to win this game a lot, because Coach Morales was there, and it would be huge for them to knock off another Long Beach team like that. Obviously, it's going to be a difficult test for them, and Wilson's looking for their first win of the year, so they're going to be hungry as well.
Oh, Wilson wants to eat this week, and that is a no-doubter, because they took some pretty hard losses in the first 2 weeks. A 1-point loss in the opener at home against Paramount, and then they go on the road and get handled by West Covina. So trying to take advantage of taking on a smaller school, smaller opponent, but Mario Morales turned that Wilson program around, and that's what he's trying to do at St. Anthony as well.
One thing that Morales had when he was coaching at Wilson that Jake Hooper at St. Anthony is currently looking for is playmakers. You had guys like Jamari Roberts and Izzo Ruffin coming through Wilson. St. Anthony obviously is a smaller school, less so much with the Division I receivers. That's what Hooper's kind of in need of, because he's proven himself to be one of the best quarterbacks the school has ever had. But he needs help, especially going up in division, and that's not just outside. He needs help inside too, because he needs to be able to do what we talked about with the quarterback at Westlake. He's got to be able to complete his drop. And that's, it's tough to protect against a Division I offensive line or a defensive line when you're a smaller school.
Absolutely. He had great targets last year as he set some records, because he had Kevin Jackson and Jalen Watson. Both those guys are gone. They're no longer on the team. So there's some young targets that he's going to have to throw to. And, Nico Ragus and B.J. Busby, sophomores, can they step up to the big stage and make a name for themselves? We'll see.
I got a chance to catch up with Morales on Wednesday, talk to him about this game. We were just talking about how memories come back. I mean, obviously, he's very excited to see his old friends and colleagues, John Jansen and Mark Ziegenhagen, who are over there at Wilson. And I asked him what his best memory as Wilson head coach was, and it was a really interesting answer. He said the game at Jordan that I went to after the Melody Ross tragedy following the Poly football game on campus at Wilson was one of those memories that he just can't shake, because his team came together. They flipped the W's on their helmets upside down to make them M's for Melody. They won that game. After every touchdown, they pointed to the sky and celebrated for her. And then in one of the classiest moments I've ever seen, Morales and Ziegenhagen made sure that the Wilson buses stopped by the Melody Ross family house and bring them the game ball afterwards. And they were nice enough to include me in it, and I got video footage, and I swear to God, man, I've never videoed anything more moving than the 3 minutes we were standing there with those people.
No, it makes me emotional just kind of thinking about that night, to be honest. I was not there for that game. I was there for the Poly game, when she was killed afterwards, and that, even for me, as someone who didn't know her, just being across the street from when it happened, that night was like catharsis for me to see the team go and do something like that for her family. And, like I said, I'm fortunate enough to not be connected directly to what happened, but being there around it, I think kind of everyone needed that, even people who weren't at the game, just people in Long Beach, because these Friday night football games are important in this city, and they mean something. And so to have something that horrible happen at one of those games, kind of everyone needed to see football itself be part of the restoring,
the healing
of absolutely, of what happened in Long Beach that night.
Yeah, and Mike, like you said, it was a cathartic moment. I mean, I was at that game too, that Wilson Poly game where she was shot, and I definitely thought about it, for a while every time I went to a game, like just leaving and just thinking and about that moment, and people running and hearing that and everything. So seeing that and seeing the classy move that they did, it did help me sort of heal a little bit.
Because that next week was weird. Well, because that next week was weird. I was at the Poly Cabrillo game the next week, which ended up deciding the Moore League Championship, and was actually a close game after 3 quarters. And there were probably less than 500 people in the stands. I mean, it was just a really strange. No one went to games that night.
Yeah, it was
and so
spooky,
it was kind of weird. It was. You saw people hugging each other, didn't even necessarily know each other, even at Poly Cabrillo, but it sort of settled over the whole city, and so to see a football team decide to be the one who sort of broke through that veil was very special.
And Jordan did all they could to facilitate that, bringing in the news crews before the game, letting them come onto the field. Mm-hmm. It was just all put together so nicely, and I think it goes back to these teams playing each other, that the intra-city games are so enjoyable because there is that feeling of community that really, we love all sports, but Friday night under the lights, man, that feels like home.
Last week we had a big game at Cerritos College. Another big game rolls into Falcon Stadium, Servite versus La Mirada. Now, La Mirada, has shocked a lot of people with that Tesoro win in week 1. Yep. Big win last week. Now they get another chance to prove that they are a legitimate team in 2014. They're going to take on a top 5 team in Servite. And, number 29 ranked nationally, and they got, they're going to have their hands full with Travis Waller, an Oregon commit right there on the other side of the ball playing QB, which Mike Machete's really impressed with. He said doesn't make a lot of mistakes. We got to cut that down. And then they have, their big wide receiver, Equanimous St. Brown, top 100 recruit in the nation, 11th best wide receiver in the country, got offers from everywhere.
Equanimous St. Brown, that is just a phenomenal name, and he is also a phenomenal player. I gotta ask, man, La Mirada and Servite, are there 2 teams who really haven't won much of anything recently who've gotten more hype over the last 2 years? Everybody was talking about La Mirada last year. Obviously, the injuries and stuff depleted them. Everybody was talking about Servite before this season. They were a top 5 team nationally. I mean, can they maybe step aside and have these 2 head coaches talk to each other about how they handle off-the-field hype?
A lot of expectations. As we know, La Mirada had a lot of talent last year, but they got bit by that injury bug, so it really showed. It hurt them on the field. And then Servite, last year they were really young, but they had a lot of great talent. I mean, I remember watching them against Bosco. That was actually my first Bosco game I ever covered for you guys.
Oh, look at that.
So, I saw them really early, and they were talented. They were hanging there with St. John Bosco. It came down to about late in the third quarter, and Travis Waller is a baller, and you're going to see why he's going to Oregon. So, yeah, they're really talented. I mean, they're 1-1 right now, lost to Bishop Gorman, who Bosco will be playing later in the season. So, they got tested early, didn't quite pass that, but, there's another chance to see who's going to come out here with, great momentum coming into the next week.
The bucket is on the line again, and be careful, don't spill it. It's the Milk Bucket, Lakewood and Mayfair. We cover it every year. The Lancers have won every game since 2006, I believe. Last time Mayfair won was a season when they went undefeated during the regular season. So Monsoon's trying to get over on the Lancers. We love when someone plays for a trophy. We just love it.
Absolutely. Tuck it in a bucket. And it's a milk bucket, which is awesome. And the only thing that would make it better is if it was like the Indy 500. So they go out there and then they drink the milk and then they kiss the bricks.
Oh, Lakewood's done the milk in the bucket multiple times.
That's
well, awesome. They come prepared because they expect to win. And I think that's an interesting dynamic this week because neither of these teams have a win yet. So one of these teams is going to come out of this thing 0-3, and neither of them want to be that squad. If I'm Mayfair and I'm looking at Lakewood, and this is no slide on Lakewood because personally, for me, I think Lakewood is going to do just fine if they can stay healthy, which is a whole nother issue, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, here's the thing. The Lancers will have the best player on the field in Justin Collins. He's really impressed every game thus far. A lot of injuries around him, as you mentioned, JJ, especially in that first week, they lost a lot of guys. It's the size and the physicality of a D1 team is going to be tough for Mayfair. But if they can run the ball, we've talked about their running backs every week with Q Hall and Faison Creighton. If they can run the ball well and keep it away from Collins and sort of keep the momentum, drain the clock, and shorten the game a little bit, they'll give themselves a chance. But will they be able to run against the bigger boys of that Lancer defense?
They've been trying to do it since forever, and they've been trying to do it this year as well. So you know from experience last year that a Mayfair team is always better than they were last week. Mike Fitch does a great job out there coaching that squad up. They are always better during league play than they are during non-league play. But God, what an upset over Lakewood would do for that football program.
Absolutely. Johnny Drama fans, let's go on a Viking quest as we keep it local with LBCC, and the Vikings opened with a nice win over Moore Park in Week 1 at Vets. A solid crowd to come out and check them out. The night games on Saturday, and they were 21-21 at halftime, but pulled away, only gave up 6 points in that second half. And Chris, you got some great video of that game, and the Vikings looked pretty good, even with some guys sitting out based on suspensions from last year. But some offensive weapons, DeQuan Hampton, as advertised, knew he'd be great. And Terrio Bateman made a couple of huge plays, especially on a punt return, to start out things in that second half. And they really they look like one of the top JUCO teams in the nation, did they not?
Absolutely. They were a lot of fun to watch down there on the sidelines. Everyone knew this team was going to be able to score, put some points up with those guys you mentioned, Hampton and Brockdale. And they that was as advertised. They put it in the end zone. But the big key was going to be that defense. We didn't see a lot of that in the first half. Like you said, 21-21, made some mistakes, had some guys sitting out, started 10 freshmen there, so a little green there. But the second half, they were really proud of what they did there, and only holding them 6 points, really shutting that offense out down the stretch.
Well, and let me say, there's a lot of familiar faces on that defense. Jason Pops Fao had a great game at defensive tackle from Poly.
Boy, I would have lost the over-under on Pops references in this podcast.
Oh, without question, Mark. And, some great Poly linebackers, Matthew Rowe, Caleb Turner. But really the guy that stood out on that defense was J.J. Allen. He was just in the backfield every play, always around the ball. He looks really special. Brett Peabody's super high on him, and he had a great game. So LBCC will be back at Vets Saturday, 6 p.m. Come check them out. It's the only college team in the city, but they are fun to watch for sure.
That's it. That's all. There ain't no more. Another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk Football Edition is in the books. We have got a huge weekend up ahead of us with these games. Like we mentioned, man, we are going to see some really, really good football. Some really good football players this weekend. And we're going to be bringing all of that coverage to you on GazetteSports.com and in the Press Telegram. For Mike, for Tyler, for Chris, for JJ, for Vinny, the sports baby Gardabasio, for everybody else involved in this show and everything we produce to bring you the best sports coverage in Long Beach. Thank you, Long Beach. We will see you in the stands this weekend.
It's like hosting in the third person.
Third person for the...